Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Nerd Enthusiast Poker podcast and video. Make sure that you check out our sponsors. We have an official sponsor, The Slot Squad. You can check them out, theslotsquad.com. We have a Twitch channel. We also have all the exclusive signups for all the legal states in the United States right now, including Michigan that just went live recently. Buddy. You can sign up there. You get free deposit bonus, all great stuff. Theslotsquad.com. Check them out. Stop by. Let us know what you think. We usually have been doing movie reviews every month, and we decided to switch it up. Brian had a good idea to let's do a book review. Yeah. So I don't know if we're really going to be doing strategy book reviews, but we'll be doing like story book reviews. And so we are doing, which we both read, Ben Mezrich's Straight Flush, which is a true story. And Brian, so I had read it before, and Brian just read it now. So just a little backstory on the author. He wrote if you've seen the movies 21, if you've seen the movies The Social Network, he was the author behind the books that inspired both of those movies.
Yep.
And so he also writes a lot of casino stuff as well. And so obviously his book here, Straight Flush, is what we're going to be talking about today. I like this author a lot. I've been reading a lot of his books. I just recently read Bitcoin Billionaires, which is like kind of a sequel to the Social Network movie. So I have a feeling that Bitcoin Billionaires, you're going to see a movie coming out in the near future at some point based off of his book. So I'm a fan of his book. When Brian brought this up, I said, yeah, let's do it. I'm a fan of his. I like the book a lot. Now, Brian just recently read it, so I'm going to be kind of filtering off of what he's saying, but it's fresh in his mind, so he's going to take the lead here and just kind of tell you guys what it's about, what's going on.
So, yeah, the title's Straight Flush, but it kind of has a little, like, caveat to it at the end. It's a true story of 6 college friends who dealt their way to $1 billion online poker empire and how it all came crashing down. So, basically, this book, it dates back to the early 2000s, from the beginning, pre-poker boom, and then pretty much plays up and ends at what's commonly known as Black Friday, which is the day that the U.S. government pretty much seized the various poker websites that were operating at the time lawfully, but now, things have changed, seized those websites. So the story follows 6 friends that were all fraternity brothers, right? And they pretty much get introduced to poker at like a local bar near their college. One guy gets a bright idea to say, yo, there's these other poker sites out there that he thought were rinky-dink. And he's like, yo, I think that we could do better. We could make a better product. Let's do it. So some of them came from money. Like that was apparent. They went to University of Montana. The main character pretty much was the founder. His name's Scott Tom. His father was wealthy, and he was the initial investor. Said, listen, you get it going, you get it up and running, I'll give you $25,000. So, Scott, he goes out, recruits a bunch of his fraternity brothers, brings them into the fold, and they pretty much set up shop in his father's basement home. That's where they get things off the ground, and they reach out to various local people within their community, friends, family, whoever, and they raise $750,000, which to me, like, I wish they would have hit on that a little bit more, because I'm like, yo, how the hell did they convince people to give them $750,000? So they pretty much take this $750,000.
Rich people know rich people.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. They find some software developers in Korea, pay them to create the software, meet with them, fly to Costa Rica, set up shop in Costa Rica, and boom, they start what's known as Absolute Poker. Now, I don't know if you played on Absolute back in the day. I didn't. I was primarily on Party and Poker Stars at the time.
So I was definitely on Party Poker. I was definitely on, what was it, Bodog, right? Before Bovada?
Yeah, Bodog.
Bodog was actually the first online site I ever played on.
Mm-hmm.
It was Bodog. I think I dabbled in Absolute, but I wasn't on there like 24/7.
Yeah, it was, like I said, the big three, I don't say big three, but it was, Party Poker, Poker Stars. You had Ultimate Bet. You had Absolute, and then you had a bunch of Bodog. You had a bunch of little ones that weren't really in the game, but people were playing on them. So they start Absolute, and within no time, this thing takes off. And it all is obviously as a result of what happens in 2003 with the poker boom, with Moneymaker. Everyone sees that a regular Joe can win the main event, and then boom, next thing you know, waterfalls. And these kids, well, I say kids, but these guys are in their mid to late 20s starting this thing.
Yeah.
So a lot of the book has to do with them, partying.
Yes.
Making loot.
So that's what's, I think, a fun part of the story is, like, you get that side of it, too.
Yeah, they bring in, like, the one guy has a Ducati shipped over, because they're living in Costa Rica. And listen, if you've never been to Costa Rica, it's like...
Wait, you've been to Costa Rica?
Once.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
It's like, kind of like, I don't want to say third world country, because it's not third world country, but there's like a seediness to it. Like, there's beautiful homes, high-end homes, but there's a lot of, like...
It's not, yeah.
Yeah, it's questionable. So, but at the time, that's where all these places were really stationed. Like, they had a bunch of I think 3 or 4 different sports betting businesses were out there. So anyway, from the start, these guys said, like, we want to do this legit. We want it to be poker. We don't want to get involved with the stuff that we feel could lead us down a bad path. So they stuck primarily to poker. While other companies were doing, like, taking bets, things like that, were pretty much violating U.S. law at the time. But poker, according to the Wire Act, which is what we'll get into, we'll get into that. They had all their T's crossed and their I's dotted. So in the early 2000s, after the Moneymaker effect, they look for ways to kind of market their product better, and that's when they start getting into TV. That's when all the TV shows started. You saw, like, High Stakes Poker, the Heads Up Championship. You saw, like, North American Poker Tour. Like, there was all kinds of poker things on television. WSOP had it.
Everyone had a show, yeah.
So you would see, like, Absolute advertised at this time. So these guys are on the up and up, right? Company's growing. They're making tens of thousands of dollars a day for themselves, millions of dollars for the company. Fast forward to 2006, right? These guys are about to take their company live on the UK stock market, right? They're about to be evaluated at $1 billion. Then U.S. comes in and passes the Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act.
UIGA, or whatever,
So this dates back to 2006, and this is kind of when
And that law, that law was put onto, like, some other bill that had nothing. It was supposed to be about, like, it was like a post 9/11 bill.
It was an anti-terrorism bill.
Yeah, and they threw this on, like, last second, like, some senator or whatever tagged this part on that had, like, nothing to do with it.
I remember when this is when we were, I don't want to say on the up and up with poker, but this is when we were first really, like, starting to get our feet established, and we were playing. And I remember when this bill passed, and we were kind of like, yo, what does this mean for us? Like, can we play? Can we not play?
It was a questionable time because there was no, like, direct answer of, like, what we can and can't do.
No one knew.
Yeah.
No one knew whether we would still be able to play or not. And honestly, either did they. So in the book, it kind of touches on how they really were unable to interpret this new law and how it was going to impact them. So basically, what the UIGEA said was, didn't necessarily name online poker as being against the law, but it limited and pretty much outlawed the transaction companies from taking deposits and withdraw and processing withdrawals for players in the United States that were involved with internet gaming.
Yeah.
So like you could still play poker, which a lot of, remember partypoker.net, everyone had a .net where you could play for free.
Yeah.
But if it involved any transactions of money,
it was the transactions of actually putting the money on or off was the illegal part of it.
so this is where things kind of get shady with Absolute. Realizing that they can no longer work with their like already established like
Payment
processors.
Because so if you don't know, like anytime you go to a store, and you pay with your credit card or debit card, there's a transaction processor that processes that money. It's not like money goes from A to B. It goes like A, B to C to D to E to get to your account to get to there. So there's a middleman processor that takes care of all that.
So at the time, NetTeller was one of the bigger ones. PayPal was kind of in the game, and nothing was getting denied. Nothing was getting kicked back. Everything was getting accepted. But as soon as this law passed, they all pulled out of the game.
Yes.
And NetTeller actually wound up like they were looked at by the U.S. government. I think they had to go through something like, I don't know what it was, but I know that they had litigation brought against them for taking bets, like taking money and then putting it onto these sites. So anyway, so these guys start dealing with the shadier payment processors.
Yeah.
Which, they were just looking to make a quick buck and then get out of the game. And that's kind of what did them in, is that, they were trying to see a loophole in the law and still kind of keep their business running. And that's kind of what, was their demise. But in the meantime, like the stories that they were talking about in this thing, like the one guy, the main guy, he's in a plane crash with like his buddies and like his wife or his girlfriend. And like, there's all these rumors about like there being like a bag of money in the plane and a bag of drugs. And when I read that, I'm like, I remember reading this. I remember something about this happening. Like the CEO of one of the online sites got in a plane crash. No one got hurt, but like there was like a bag of money in the car that like the authorities found and it was like $3 million, something like that. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And like all these rumors started with like, money laundering and what's really going on?
Because if you remember like playing on the sites, you would start getting these weird messages. Before we knew it was like illegal and before like the government actually came out, all of a sudden you started getting stuff like, so you make $100 deposit on these sites that you thought were legit, and back then it was, and then all of a sudden like the deposit would say from like Golf World China. And you're like, what is this?
Yes.
You're like, what is this with you're like, what is this? It would be all these random things. Instead of saying like Poker Stars or whatever, it was like these random names showing up in your bank account. Like, what is going on here?
Yep. So, I mean, look, these guys, I don't want to ruin it for anyone because I want you to read the book. Because, like you said, I enjoyed it, but I do think that he kind of sensationalized them a little bit. Like, he made them seem innocent, and like, they're not innocent. Like, these guys knew what they were doing. And there was definitely some shadiness because they even touch on it in the book. And I know you're going to remember this. Do you remember the whole shady deal with the it was like a bot. They thought it was a bot account, and his name was Pot Ripper.
Yes.
Okay.
I thought you were going to talk about this.
Yes. So they touch on that briefly in the book, but I remember that this was like a huge deal when all this was going on. Like a huge deal where it was like kind of like insider trading where the account Pot Ripper actually came back to like someone that was high up in the company, and they were like pretty much like defrauding players of like hundreds of thousands of dollars.
No, it was more than that. Like it was so. I just wanted to bring. Okay. Main event champion. I just want to make sure I had the information right. Main event champion Russ Hamilton. Okay. Now Russ Hamilton. He won. I know this because I'll tell you why. He won the 25th anniversary of the main event. He was a big dude because Benny Binion put in that year that the winner of the main event for the 25th anniversary, on top of winning the prize pool, he was going to throw in a bonus of the player's weight in silver.
Oh, yeah, I remember this.
So if you look up if you look it up on YouTube and find the old video, at the final table when their head's up, they're eating like pasta and like food the whole final table because if you put on a couple pounds and that's in ounces of silver.
I remember you telling me this story.
You get like, that's an extra probably couple $1,000, just for eating like a big dinner. So they were eating at the final table trying to put on weight. And I heard Benny Benning's like sweating because Russ Hamilton's this big dude. He ends up winning it, right? So Russ Hamilton was like an early, I don't want to say maybe a contractor or like influencer when they were getting these sites up and running, and he had access. So yeah, I don't know if it was ever made completely public that it came out that he was the one that was behind the Pot Ripper account, but he was definitely involved, and apparently other players were also involved. Some names were thrown out over the years. I'm not going to say them in here because I'm not 100% off, and I don't want to like name something that I might not know 100% about. But there's other players involved in that deal, and it actually screwed up a lot of players. Like, do you remember that dude? What was his name? Free Rock or Freedom? Oh man, what was his name? I gotta look it up. Oh man, it's driving me crazy. But we're on the spur of the moment. So this player, he was big in the early 2000s, young kid playing the game, and he was a big online guy as well. Well, he lost a ton of money to like Russ Hamilton and some other players in like private online games, and he said that like it ruined his like ego because like like you think you're playing great poker, and all of a sudden you're constantly losing, you're constantly getting beat up, and you're like, dude, what am I doing wrong? And like it mentally like crushed him. It actually destroyed him. He got a lot of money back, but he got destroyed mentally because of these downswings, and it was due to this hacker account, Pot Ripper, and they found it out through like mathematics. Like they were just running the diagnosis of like hands. It's kind of like the same thing with the Mike Postle, or what's his name?
Yeah,
the Mike Postle. Is that how you say
Postle.
it? Yeah. They like ran the diagnosis of hands and like said this is like mathematically like winning the Mega Mills like 3 times in a row.
Well, so in the book they touch on it, and like pretty much. What happens is the guy who comes in second in this big tournament emails them and is like, yo, I think you guys should look into this. This guy ran way too pure in order for him to have won. Like he was folding in the good spots and calling like with ace high versus like a bluff. Like he was just making unbelievable calls. So anyway, turns out that the account had the ability to see all the other players' cards at the table, and like that's pretty much how he was defrauding all these guys of their money. Now, the conspiracy theory is, and this I've read this after I read the book, I've looked into it a little bit more, is that the plane crash that I already talked about that this guy was involved in happened 2 weeks before this Pot Ripper thing kind of took off. And look, the account came back to the CEO's email. So there was all these inside people, like 2+2 forums and all kinds of shit, thinking that,
So it is. Prahlad Freeman. Do you remember him?
Yes.
So he was, I couldn't think of his name. His nickname was Spirit Rock. I was trying to remember what it was. He got like really beat up from a lot of these games, and it like crushed his role. Like,
yeah, I think that might have been from the Ultimate Bet one. Because there was a scandal with Ultimate Bet too.
Well, they
merged.
The same thing.
They merged. At one point. Yeah.
And then they got like access to both accounts.
Yes.
And it was just like.
So anyway, long story short, the plane crash happens. This dude loses $3 million, right, to the authorities. This happens, right? They find this bag of money. 2 weeks later, they find all this evidence of this guy trying to get hundreds of thousands of dollars in these private games, and it comes back to the CEO. Obviously, in the book, they're not saying that it's the CEO because they talk to like the author talks to the guys that were involved, so they're always going to shine themselves in a better light.
Plus, listen, Ben Mezrich does a great job of reporting, but at the same time, he's not a detective. He's not a cop.
No,
so
he's just writing. He's writing an
interview like of what's he's taking all the personal accounts and he's putting them all together to the best of his ability. And obviously, people are going to lie. So, can you constantly take everything for true story? Listen, like we always say, there's the truth, a lie, and then there's the gray area in between. You know, and this book is like the gray area. It's truth, some fraud, lies, but it's basically the story. It's what happened. It's just, is it 100% accurate? No. And Ben Mezrich says it like, this is my account.
And it's for enjoyment.
Yeah.
He's not trying to write a completely historical nonfiction. Yeah. It's like, hey, you want to read a good book of a nonfiction story about something that happened that you might have lived through? Here you go, read my book.
Yeah.
But anyway, so fast forward a couple years later. Now, 2006, the UIGA passes. 5 years later is when, things kind of shut down. The internet, or no, 9 years later, right?
No.
2015 or
Black
2011.
Friday is what, 2009? Yeah, Black Friday poker is 2008. So it was like
3 years later.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. Believe
So-
me, I literally know where I was when it hit, so I remember specifically.
So what's crazy is that they were using these shady ass. It was April 15th. I know that was the date because it's mentioned in here. They were using these shady payment processors, right? And the federal government actually, as a part of their investigation, set up their own payment processing like company, and that's how they.
Oh no, you know what? It was April 15th.
Yeah, it's 5 years later. Yeah,
5 years
I was right.
later, okay.
Yep. So they set up this fraudulent payment processing company that the dudes at Absolute Poker used, and that's how they built their case against them. And that's pretty much was like the dagger. Like, yeah, we processed like 50 mil for you guys, and we were the feds. Like,
Yeah,
so anyway.
that's not a good day.
So, but the thing is a lot of the guys that were involved kind of stepped away from the company, and they weren't named in the indictment. The only two guys were named was the Scott Tom, who was the CEO, really, and then the founder, and then his half brother, who was in charge of payment processing. So, from what I read at the end of the book, after Black Friday, the payment processor, his name was Brent in the book, Brent Buckley. He turned himself in. He had to do 14 months. But the dude Scott, he's living in Antigua. He never answered for the indictment. He never came back to the States. And some of these guys,
Even today, I thought they cleared him, or he had to do like he came back. Someone came back, and
he might have came back, but in the
someone
book
came back
it
and
doesn't show.
they just put probation on him.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Maybe it was him.
Let me look. What's the
Scott
name?
Tom.
Yeah,
Here.
This is our like fact check of the moment. We have the computers here because we want to try to like fact check.
Make sure we're giving you accurate info. But anyway, look, just talked about the book itself. It's a good book. I would definitely recommend it if you're interested in just learning a little bit about the time where internet poker really took off. The stories are incredible. Some of the parties that these guys attended, like they were at the Playboy Mansion. They were like in Monte Carlo. All this stuff.
Yeah, so he came back. He pled guilty to a single count of being an accessory after the fact of transmission of gambling information. As part of the deal, he had to forfeit $300,000, was released on bail, sentenced. This was a couple years ago, I think 2017, September 28th.
Okay, well, this is written in 2013.
Yeah, so he ended up coming back, and I think he just got like a year probation, and he had to pay a huge fine, and like he can't ever do like a poker site or something again. Like there was all these things, but basically at the end of the day, it was like time served in jail for like when he came back. He was in jail waiting on bail or something, and they ended up giving him time served probation was the ending result of that.
Yeah, so we're going to do another giveaway on this pod. I'm actually going to give you my copy of Straight Flush. All you need to do is at Eat a Hoagie on Twitter, DM them, send them a DM.
Yeah, don't put it publicly. This is our we're going to try to do giveaways every month for the podcast, and we'll put a secret thing in the middle of the podcast somewhere. So
the secret word is going to be it's going to be
poker.
Absolute Poker.
Yeah.
We'll enter your name into a drawing. We'll pull at the end of the month, and we'll contact you if you won. Like I said, it's a free book. It's definitely worth the read. I read it in like literally like 3 days. It's not really all that intensive, but it's a really good story, especially for someone I don't say our age, but someone who lived that, who lived through Black Friday, and it does give you a lot of information about the ins and outs of how everything kind of went down with the federal government and the passing of the laws. It talks about the Wire Act, which is kind of what we want to transition to, right? So yeah, again, at Eat a Hoagie on Twitter.
Send private DM.
Absolute Poker for your chance to win my copy of Straight Flush.